Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So much for that anticipated leisurely drive down Route 17 and 501 to Myrtle Beach. When you're on the road, your brain gets a bit addled. I completely forgot that March 1st was a Friday. If you've ever visited Myrtle Beach on a Friday afternoon, then you know what I'm talking about. Traffic. Lots of traffic. Because it's Friday. Even the locals don't even travel here on Fridays. To make it worse, I did sleep in till about 10 a.m. Add some prep time and a couple of hours drive to that, and I got to the outskirts of Myrtle Beach around 2 p.m. You take an off-ramp from Route 17 and get onto Route 501, a wide, multi-lane roadway that varies from 4 to 6 lanes, depending on how far out you are from the ocean. This roadway is euphemistically called the evacuation route. This is a classic oxymoron. Evacuation and Myrtle Beach are words that shouldn't be in the same sentence. The combination just doesn't work, and neither does the evacuation route. I was only 6 miles from the beach, and it took me over 2.5 hours to get there. Keep in mind that this wasn't the 4th of July weekend. This was the beginning of March. Nobody celebrates holidays in March. Nights are still skirting 30 degrees, and daytime temperatures were in the high 40s and low 50s. Everyone complained about the cold, but I just smiled. Still, it's not prime vacation weather. Nobody says, "Honey, look, it's going to hit the mid-40s today. Let's go for a swim." This video is a flyover of Route 501, the evacuation route. This is what the route looks like the rest of the week, excluding Fridays and Friday afternoon. Starting out about 6 miles west of the beach, an area mostly composed of light industry, you can see that the traffic is generally light, both in and out of Myrtle Beach. As you'd imagine, the traffic builds during the rush hour, not like anything on Fridays. This was the stretch that took me a couple of hours to traverse on Friday, March 1st. Keep in mind that March 1st can hardly be considered a tourist time. 4 months from then, on or around July 1st, the route will once again be unable to handle any type of evacuation. In earlier years, while leaving from vacation on an early Sunday morning, it took the family about 90 minutes to get to the end of the stop-and-go traffic jam. In fact, the closer you get to the coast, the more traffic and slower traffic was evident, as the entire highway was emptying out into residential streets that hug the coast. A few blocks away, the traffic thinned out, and you were finally able to travel at a normal pace. Pirateland. And then, finally, late that day, I arrived at Pirateland. This camping site saved my sanity at a time when I really needed it. Only 200 yards from the beach, I could hear the crash of the surf hours each day, smell the salt air all the time. Originally, I was going to stay for only March, but I liked the campground so much I extended my stay for an additional 2 weeks. Considering how exhausted I was when I pulled in on March 1st, I felt a lot better by the time I left on April 18th. Pirateland is a family site, so the name makes sense. Although it's a bit lame name for a campsite these days, it certainly does draw in the families. Apparently, pirates rule. Plus, this is their 50th year of operation, so I imagine that the name Pirateland was much more in vogue in 1978. If you're at all familiar with Myrtle Beach, you know that half of everything on the strip and in the stores has the word pirate in it. As their advertisement proclaims, Pirateland, tucked away in the south end of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, they're conveniently located along the oceanfront just outside of the Myrtle Beach city limit. They offer lodging options for every family. All these options have easy access to the half-mile frontage of beachfront along the Atlantic Ocean. More information about Pirateland can be found at their internet address. My site was in an ideal location because it was still off-season, the rates were very good, and there were a lot of empty sites along the beach. Claiming and paying for site number 620, I quickly backed in and didn't even hit anything, and then set up camp. I was new to all this and had never disconnected the Riglet from the Ford Explorer since the day I bought it a month before. I was quite lucky in that the site was level. The appliance hookups were on the right side of the camper, and there were no spectators around to witness if I made a major screw-up. To this date, I hadn't even stepped into the camper as I was staying in hotels and motels. Essentially, I'd been using the camper as a utility trailer, hauling all the stuff I and friends had thrown into it in February. So, my first night in Riglet, I actually slept on the bed after moving a lot of stuff off of it. It was very comfortable, but I had the distinct feeling that I was sleeping in a storage locker. It took the better part of a week, but I finally organized all the stuff so that the rig was more habitable. I was able to walk from the bed at one end to the bathroom at the other. Since the Riglet is only 21 feet long, it's not a long walk. But I didn't have to step over plastic bins, containers, boxes, and work-related material. In fact, to get to the bathroom, I had to step through my office, cleverly disguised as a dinette with 2 bench seats. The area is a mix of light industry further out, homes closer in, and retail stores right along the beach and a couple of blocks out from the coast. What I learned about backing in and heading out. The bane of new RVers is having to back into a tight spot with their rig and adjacent property still intact. As you do so, the rig moves back and forth from the right to the left to the right. While you're looking in the side mirror of your truck, you can see the rig swerving in one direction, and you compensate based on what your intuition tells you to do. Unfortunately, you need to throw tuition right out the window, because you must turn in the opposite direction to get the desired course direction. Once you get used to that, you're fine. Heading out is much easier. You simply spend 10 minutes hooking up the RV to your truck, turn on the gas, pull straight out, turn, and drive down the street. Air Force. Believe it or not, we're guarded by the Air Force here. As a family, we had always stayed in the hotels at the extreme southern end of Myrtle Beach, about 5 or 6 miles from where I was currently staying. We'd heard and saw an occasional commercial jet leaving Myrtle Beach Airport, which was a mile or so behind the hotels. What we didn't see was the military presence. During my stay at Pirateland, though, I saw that presence every day, much to the chagrin of the RVers who didn't like the noise. I had no problem with it, as my son is an airman currently stationed in South Korea and Guam. During his training in western Massachusetts, I got a chance to wander around an F-16 in one of their hangars. I'm not of a particularly military bent, but I was impressed with the flying machine. Seeing and touching it was an experience. It's so much more solid, longer, and heavier when you experience it up close. And when the F-16s weren't present, there was a variety of helicopters coursing a path up and down the coastline. Most were small devices, but you could often see a large aging Sikorsky Pavlo flying with the Pelicans. The weekly RV cycle. It's only March and early April, but there is a definite weekly cycle that presents itself at this time of year. During the middle of the week, this place is like a ghost town. Come Thursday morning, though, the staff who drive the small orange tractors start arriving, pulling the rental RVs behind them. They're experts, you can tell. They back in those long RVs in a fraction of a minute, and I've never seen them have to do it a second time. They unhitch, and then they're out of there in less than 90 seconds total. Then, on Thursday afternoon, family trucks and RVs filled with kids let out, quote, early from school start trickling in and docking at assigned sites. By Friday night, the campground is packed with families. A lot of the assignment of the site seems purposeful. Many of the families know each other and have reserved sites adjacent to friends, probably as long ago as last year. Friday night, the 5-year-olds, and sometimes the 50-year-olds, pack the small, narrow streets with bikes and just about any other non-motorized vehicle you could imagine. This is not as dangerous as it sounds because the parents of the kids are busy throwing back a cold one and grilling the evening's meal, not driving large pickups around. This is as close to tailgating that I've ever seen outside of a football game. Monday, back to ghost town status. Dogs. There are more dogs here than you'd see in a large kennel. They come in 2 flavors, extra small and extra large. There are even a couple of Bichon Frises in the mix, my old dog. The owners are loyal enough to take their pets out even on lousy days, and everyone uses plastic bags. The small dogs are cute, and some really small, a bit larger than teacup size. It's a bit funny to watch a 3-pound dog, its legs pumping furiously, lead a plodding 300-pound man in its wake. A couple of RVs up from mine, there's an elderly couple who own 2 large golden retrievers, each of which appears to be about the same age as their masters. It's always heartwarming to watch the 4 of them take their stroll twice a day. Relative size. At times like this, I feel like I'm a guppy living inside a tank of much larger fish. Residing in a 1-person, 20-foot-long rig, everything else around me is obscenely larger. One brand in particular, the Montana, is so big that you can probably fit 5 of my Coleman lanterns inside a Montana. In this situation, I'm not talking about small handheld lanterns. Rather, that's the make and model of my rig, or riglet, as I've now come to think of it. In this image, see the small white camper to the left? My riglet is half that size. Now compare that to the brown rig to the right. You could store 3, possibly 4 riglets in the large RV. Size does matter when you need storage room. Image courtesy of Tampa Photo News. Weekends. So, weekends here are really interesting with all the kids around. It's nice to hear the voices. They bring me back to my teaching and family years. Kids race around my and others' rigs, and just last evening, a large soap bubble wafted through my open door as I was sitting in my office. I should have taken a picture of it, but I was so enthralled by the unexpected experience that I just froze in place. Later, after dark, the lightsabers came out. Mallards. When I first got my iPhone, there were so many variations of beeps coming from it that I would occasionally miss a call, so I changed the sound for incoming phone calls to duck. It worked really well, except in meetings where the duck in my pocket started to raise a ruckus. It was fun watching the look of consternation on the faces of those in the meeting. Some would look towards the windows, some towards the ceiling, others just bobble-headed back and forth in confusion. Apparently, no one I've ever met has attended a meeting with a loud duck. It wasn't until I got down here to Myrtle Beach that I realized the sound was actually a recording of a mallard. There are a lot of mallard families roaming the campground, looking for leftover food or a handout, and the RVers just love that. They, the ducks, are very polite, somewhat curious, and always hungry. Occasionally, I'd get a call and the mallards just outside my camper acted in the same way that my meeting mates did, staring around in confusion. More often than not, though, I'd hear quacking from outside, and I'd reach for my phone out of sheer habit. Yesterday, a strange thing happened involving ducks and phones. While I was grocery shopping at Walmart, I was standing in the aisle looking at something. I don't even remember what it was. The guy was standing right behind me, back to back, and he was looking at something else as well. Then the mallard told me that there was an incoming call. Suddenly, we both turned to our right, then in synchronized fashion, pulled out our phones to answer the call. Phones in hands, we looked at each other in surprise, and then both of us burst out laughing. What were the chances of that happening? He answered his call, and I strolled down the aisle with a smile on my face. Never happened to me before, and probably never will again. Panic. You might ask why so many images were taken from the inside of Wrigley. Have you ever heard of panic attacks? I experienced my first one about 30 years ago, and it was misdiagnosed as any number of heart issues. They had me on digoxin, running stress tests on treadmills, and wearing Holter monitors to track my heart activity for 24 hours at a time. It wasn't until I moved to another state for a new job that a general practitioner whom I went to see said that my issue wasn't my heart, but my CNS or central nervous system. What I was experiencing were panic attacks, not heart flutters. These have been related to agoraphobia, claustrophobia, isolation, any number of ongoing stressful situations, or life changes. Victims have little control over these, as they can occur whenever and wherever. Many find that they can minimize the effects by deep breathing exercises during onset, while many others, including myself, find that that strategy just doesn't help. For me, having a panic attack makes me risk-averse. My brain tells me that if I chose to do Y, the world's not going to come to an end. My CNS stops the decision-making cold. I do neither X nor Y, not even letting me make the decision. Caught in this netherworld, I'll very often experience a panic attack. What this means in a practical sense is that many of the simple things in life are difficult to attain. For example, Wrigley was only parked a couple hundred yards from the beach, but it took me almost a month to visit the beach for the first time. Once I had done so, then the event became less or non-threatening, and I was able to go to the beach every day after that with little or no discomfort. But taking that first step was very difficult. So, you might ask, why is this guy who's just experienced a series of extremely stressful life events, driving all over the country, seeking new experiences, feeling a bit isolated, and living in a small and somewhat claustrophobic camper, doing all this? Darn if I know, but I have gotten used to stranger things. If you or members of your family or friends would like to find out more about this disorder, check out this site. Heading out. And as I pulled out into the sunset, leaving lot 620 in my rearview mirror, I turned right at the beach and banged into something for the first time. I got out to take a look, and sure enough, I had whacked and wrecked my steps, which I had forgotten to slide back under the camper before leaving. A week later, it took $380 and a day in the shop to replace them. So much for the dramatic exit. Thanks for taking the time to watch this part of my journey. If you enjoyed this video, click on the like button just below. If you'd like to continue traveling with Fimian, hit the subscribe button.